Welcome to Management 280, Organizational Behavior, offered online by Harper College, utilizing Blackboard Course Management System. And my name is Dr. George Mochocki. And so we're going to be covering two chapters this week. We're going to be covering Chapter 14 on leadership, and we're going to be covering Chapter 15 on organizational design. If I look at last week's chapter that we covered in Chapter 13, when I was looking at power and influence, which we look at how we use our own power and influence, take the power and influence of a leader in this chapter. So let me go first, we'll do a real quick review in the chapters, then I'll talk about what the assessments you're going to be doing, I'll talk a little bit about your quizzes, and what else is going to be required. So leadership. I teach a leadership series here at Harper College. It's management. It's 1 credit hours, but you take them in succession, so you get the full credit hours. So it's management 205, 206, and 207. And if you really look at it, it looks nice on your transcript because it looks like you've taken 3 classes, all on leadership, and it's basically one class just broken up in 3 different ways because it's 1 credit hours each. So if you get a chance to see Dr. Mochocki on there, you'll enjoy it. This role-playing, talking, learning how to do presentations, face-to-face class, and discussing men versus women leadership. Everything you're learning about this chapter, but more in depth, okay? So let's go about leadership. The first thing, is there a difference between a male leader and a female leader, other than the physical appearance? Yes, there is. You know, men are more direct, more a little bit, some people may say insensitive, a little bit more abrasive. Not all, I'm just generalizing, I'm stereotyping, and they're more to the point. You could call us a little bit autocratic. Where women lead are just by their nature, because they're, and I'm not stereotyping, but generalizing, they're more sympathetic, they're more emotional, they're more participative. And so now if you look at the two things, we're looking at team building, you need direction, but you need also participation. So as a male, I try to pick up some of the skills and the attributes of my female co-parts. And as a, what do you call it, as a female, I try to pick up some attributes of my male cohorts. So if I look at the two, to be an effective leader, I have to have both. I got to be participative. I have to be autocratic at certain times. It depends on the situation. So when you look at this chapter, reading its different theories, you know, you look about the different behaviors of leaders. You're going to look about different traits of leaders. You're going to look at the different situations. You have Pat Cole theory that looks at the behavior of the leaders, the skills of the leaders, depending on the situation and environmental, depending on your team you're managing, depending and the level of the individual you're managing. And then, you know, then you have situational leaders, you have transactional leaders, you have transformational leaders, you have the leader exchange model, you have the shared leadership that works well with the participative, you have the servant leaders. So if you look at leaders, and and look at the servant leader, Martin Luther King would be a good example of servant leader. He gave more, not for his own personal gain, but to help other things. Another transactional leader, transformational leader, it's also Martin Luther King, but you look at John F. Kennedy, could be another one that transformed everything else, Abraham Lincoln, in that one. But then you have, those are real good leaders, we say very good positive role model. But then you have other leaders that have the charisma, but may not have the traits. If you look at that would take the world in the wrong direction, or the country in the wrong direction. You have Napoleon, you have Hitler, all different types of leadership, but they're still leaders. You also have the informal leader. You have like Gandhi, was not really, he was a leader, but he wasn't like one with position. People just listened to him, believed in him, and he was a leader that had very charismatic type of leader. So the leader is, some have the skills, some are developed when you look at the history, and so we all could be leaders. So you're going to do an assessment later on leadership, but when you read the chapters, look at all those different situations. And now remember, we're all different. How I lead, I'm more of a participative type of a leader. But once in a while, I got to be that theory X, that autocratic type of leader, because the situation warrants it, okay? So when I look at it, so I'm looking at the situation, it's not my norm, but I have to be able to adjust to that norm. And that's what you'll find out. So, and plus your employees are different. Some employees, I could just say something to them and they're upset. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you, and I'll take care of it. Other employees, so then I got to be a little take it on. If I'm too easy on them, they think I'm wishy-washy, or I'm ineffective. So remember, you look into the situation and it's all developing. How do I develop the skills? How do I talk to people? How do I tell them what to do? How do I ask him what to do? How do I make them all work as a team? I'm still always the leader, but I have different roles. I have to be more participative and I have to give more, give away more, empower more employees. I become a stronger leader when I have more people that could act on their own in the best interest for the organization and the culture, because I've developed them that through processes, through training, through cultural development, through socialization, with everything you're learning about this. So that's chapter 14. The next chapter is another interesting chapter. Now you take this leadership. I'm an autocratic type of leadership. But let's talk about what organization would want an autocratic type of leader. We're in the military, right? Or a bureaucratic type of leader. I'm a surgeon. I had to be more autocratic. Well, Liz, what do you think? You think we should stop the bleeding this way, or we should stop the bleeding that way? You know, someone's got to make a decision. It has to be quick, fine, and one person. So you have to take that more of an autocratic type of leader, not a participative type of leader. After the patient's or the patient's gone for surgery, you may have a participative type of a leader, because the situation says, how are we going to address this issue when we're going to operate in this person? What do you think would be the best course of action? And now you're asking other people. So participative depending on the situation. So that's what you're going to find now. So that type of leadership depends on the design of an organization. Not only does the organization have the design, sometimes I could be let's go with the two types we have. You have the four common types of organization, you have the unity principles. We all have some kind of functions. You have the traditional type of organization. You have an open system. Some organizations are more open, or now, when I was, the way the book's talking open, we're talking about transparency. Do I tell everyone about everything? Sure, you tell everyone, but do you tell them everything? Do we tell everything that we do at our home? No. Certain things are private, certain things are open. So even organizations, how transparent, how open they are, depends on the company policy, depends on the organization. If I'm doing some kind of a new testing, I can't be very open. Here, we're doing this, because it's a competitive edge. Okay, so if you look at the transparency, the open sea, where it's a closed system, an open system, depends on the organization, depends on the product, depends on the culture, depends on the environment, depends what's going on, all the forces is affecting an organization. Okay, so then you go to how are you going to design a horizontal. Most organizations, if you look at bureaucratic, is vertical, up and down. Those are good because, real quick chain of command, goes up and down. When you have horizontal, that means you have more interaction, depends on a different area. If I have a very rigid, mechanistic organization, like a machine, it's very hard to change something, because I gotta either take it apart, re-weld it, reprogram it, because I'm very rigid. Okay, so look at it as a mechanistic organization, as a machine, very rigid, which is very functional. I'm a doctor, I have to have a certain process, but then the other flip side is an organic organization. When I think of organic organization, I'm looking at flexible. I'm looking at adapting to the organization, adapting to the environment, and internal, external forces. Think of a flower, very organic. When it's raining, it blossoms. When it's cold, it shivers. When it's dry, it shivers. When you add water, it reflects to it. When the wind's blowing, it goes back and forth. So organic is what most organizations, because we're no longer local forces. We have national forces. We have global forces. We have all these different forces, economic, you have governmental forces, you have customer forces, you have policies outside. All these forces, for an organization to be successful going forward, is more of an organic type of organization. But remember, just because I'm more organic, look, I'm very organic, a plane's very organic, very flexible, but they still have a central or very mechanistic thing in the center that allows it some flexibility. So you have to have both, but to what extent, or what structure? Now, so saying that, so that's basically your whole, and how do the people, some people would like to be told, the military want to have very structured types of life. They work very well in a mechanistic type of organization. Others want to be freelancing, want to change, want to learn. They work well in an organic type of organization. The things that you have to understand is most companies have both, but to what extent, it's like a hybrid. What extent I'm more organic, versus I'm more mechanistic. And now, what individuals do I put? Remember, as a company, the culture. I want individuals that are more flexible learning and are organic, and I want other types that want to be like accountants, for lack of better words. That discipline is very detailed, or engineering. The program is very detailed. Here you got to do one step to the next step, so it's very controlled. That type of organization I would want to really have because it makes sense for me. Okay, so we have that. So now, what else do we have? Okay, so we have all that. Those are the two chapters. What you're going to be doing, you have the quizzes. This week you're going to have the quizzes, worth on chapter 14 and 15 worth 20 points. At the end, you have Connect, chapter 14 and 15, so you have two chapters that worth 20 points. You have one form that's worth 25 points. Now, the form worth 25 points, before you do the form, you have three assessments. One is, do we have what it takes to be a leader? You're going to find out if everyone has what it takes to be a leader. It's just that you have to develop those skills. Some are born leaders, but even born leaders need to develop the charisma. How do I say everything else? Look, and if you look at the last two presidents, President Bush had a different kind of style. He wasn't very elegant in his speech, but he's still an effective leader. I'm not taking any sides, one way or the other, okay? Now you have President Obama. Now he's also a very effective leader, one way or the other. Some people say no, some don't. But he's a little more elegant than the former President Bush Jr. And now you have Romney at the competition. So the different styles, different leadership. So look at that. And not only are you looking at the leader when you're looking, going for any kind of a leadership, you also look at the vice president, same thing in a company. Who's the leader? Like if you look at right now, Apple, Jobs passed away, who's in the leadership position. He's very similar to but does he have the same kind of charisma that the former leader had before? Okay, so it's worth so you do the three assessments. So you do the one, do you have a leader? The next one is 18 question. You understand between organic and mechanistic organization. This organizational behavior. You have to understand what structure. If I understand the structure, how do I change the structure? If very organic, I have to make it more rigid. What do I do with it? If it's very mechanistic, how do I make it less rigid, and how do I change the culture by bringing people in, and in what places, what policies to help to change, do the transformation, and what kind of leader would make this happen? Okay, so you'll answer that, you find that out, and the last one is what kind of organization would you work well? If I'm more of a participator, you think I'd work well in organic one, but it may not be. So it depends on this on the assessment. Remember, the assessments are there for open up your eyes and have some fun and learn a little about yourself, because you want to find that job, that company, or even your department. Remember, you could say, I could be in a very mechanistic company, but the department I have, I'm a marketing or advertising, may be very organic, and I hire people because of that position. But in my mind, when I deal with outside my little department, I have to be more thinking very mechanistic, because that's how those the other layers will want view me, how I interact with them. All right, so that's about it for this week. We're gonna do chapters. You got to connect. You have the forums, and they're interesting. We're doing chapters 14 in leadership, chapter 15 on organizational design. Look at organic and mechanistic, and everything else will fall in place. The quizzes, good forum. Next week we'll be doing chapter 16. When I look at chapter 16, if you get a chance to read ahead, chapter 16 is basically the whole. This whole book, organization, a learning organization. Very interesting chapter. You'll enjoy it. And next week we'll talk a little bit about, since it's chapter 16, we'll talk about the research paper, and I'll give you time to talk about the forum on your research paper and get some information. Okay, so my name is Dr. George Mochocki. This is Management 280, Organizational Behavior, covering chapters 14 on leadership and chapter 15 on organizational design, focusing on mechanistic and organic. And I'll see you in the forum. Enjoy the assessment, do them honestly, and talk about them. You guys are doing well, guys and gals doing well in the discussion groups. So thank you. Bye.